This is the story of a letter that took 34 years to come home. On the ninth day of silence, two soldiers in dress uniform walked up Sarah's porch steps, and she knew before they said a single word. And then, in the same handwriting Sarah had memorized decades ago, the same three words he always closed with. The envelope had no return address, just a faded postmark, a smear of ink, and her name written in handwriting she hadn't seen in 34 years. Sarah Hayes stood in her kitchen doorway, holding it like it might disappear if she blinked. Her hands were shaking before she even opened it, because she knew that handwriting. She had memorized every loop of it, every slant, back when she was 28 years old and still waiting for a knock on the door that never brought good news. This is the story of a letter that took 34 years to come home. Sarah met Michael Hayes at a county fair in the summer of 1988. He bought her a lemonade she never asked for and told her with total confidence that he was going to marry her someday. She laughed in his face, told him he had a lot of nerve for a boy in a borrowed truck. He didn't argue. He just smiled like he already knew how the story ended. They wrote letters that whole first year, back when he was stationed 2 states away for training. Sarah still remembers the smell of the envelopes, the way his handwriting slanted hard to the right like it was always in a hurry to get to the next word. 2 years after that lemonade, she did marry him in a small church with folding chairs and a reception in her uncle's backyard. Michael joined the army the same year their son David was born. He said it was about providing, about honor, about being a man his boy could look up to. Sarah said it was about being stubborn. They were both right. He deployed when David was 8 months old. Sarah moved back in with her mother for those months, telling herself it was just easier, though really she just couldn't stand the quiet of an empty house at night. Every week a letter came, sometimes 2 pages, sometimes just a few lines scrawled on the back of a ration wrapper because he'd run out of proper paper. He wrote about the heat, about the men in his unit, about a stray dog that had adopted their outpost and refused to leave. He wrote about how he missed the sound of David crying at 3 in the morning, of all things, said he'd trade a week of sleep just to hear it once. Sarah read every letter out loud to David, even though he was far too young to understand a single word. She said it felt important that his father's voice, even secondhand through her own reading, be the first thing he learned to recognize. He always ended the same way. Not "Love Michael," just 3 words. Almost home now. Then, one week, no letter came. Sarah told herself the mail was just slow, that it happened sometimes. Then, 2 weeks passed. She started checking the mailbox twice a day, sometimes 3 times, standing at the end of the driveway even after the mail carrier had already come and gone. On the 9th day of silence, 2 soldiers in dress uniform walked up Sarah's porch steps, moving slow, the way people move when they're carrying something heavier than themselves. She knew before they said a single word. She has said in the years since that some part of her had known for 2 days already, ever since the letters stopped feeling like they were coming. Michael Hayes died protecting 2 members of his unit during an ambush outside a supply route nobody had thought was dangerous. He was 29 years old. David was 11 months old and would grow up with only photographs. They told her his personal effects would be shipped home. Weeks later, a small box arrived. His dog tags, his wedding ring, a folded photo of Sarah and baby David, but no letter. He had written one more, his commanding officer said, a last one. It never made it out of the base before word came that he was gone. It was assumed lost in the chaos of processing his effects, one casualty among thousands of pieces of paper that year. Sarah waited for it anyway, months, then a full year, then years, plural, until the waiting stopped feeling like waiting and started feeling like just another part of who she was. She told herself maybe it got misfiled somewhere in a warehouse, maybe some clerk had set it in the wrong pile, maybe it would surface someday the way lost things sometimes do. Her mother told her, gently, more than once, that it was time to let it go. Grief doesn't work on other people's timelines, and Sarah never quite managed to let it go. Not really, not even when she told people she had. She raised David alone. She never remarried, not because she couldn't, but because some part of her stayed 28 years old, standing on that porch, waiting for one more piece of paper that never came. David grew up staring at a photograph of a father he couldn't remember, trying to build a man out of stories other people told him. Out of a few worn letters he'd read so many times, the folds had started to tear. He used to ask his mother what his father's voice sounded like. She never had a good answer, because the truth was, after enough years, even she was starting to forget the exact sound of it, and that scared her more than she ever told him. He grew up anyway. He graduated high school, then college, the first in the family to do it. He got married. He had 2 children of his own, a boy and a girl, and he told them stories about a grandfather they would never meet, doing his best to keep a stranger's memory alive for kids who'd never heard his voice either. 34 years passed. Sarah turned 62. David, now grown with children of his own, still kept his father's folded flag on a shelf in his own home. Then came a phone call from the Department of Veterans Affairs Records Division, a digitization project going through decades of undelivered and misrouted military mail from the era had found something. A letter addressed to a Sarah Hayes, sealed, never opened. It had been sitting in a storage facility for over 3 decades, mislabeled under a transcription error in his unit number. Sarah almost didn't believe the woman on the phone. She asked her to repeat the name 3 times. The envelope arrived by courier on a Tuesday morning. Sarah sat at her kitchen table for 20 minutes before she could open it. David drove over the moment she called him, his hands trembling on the steering wheel the whole way. They opened it together. Inside was 1 page, written the night before the ambush. Michael wrote about the stars over the base that night, brighter than he'd ever seen them. He wrote that he'd been thinking about teaching David to fish, about the house they'd talked about building near the lake, about how he hoped his son would grow up braver than him, but not so brave he forgot to come home to the people who loved him. And then, in the same handwriting Sarah had memorized decades ago, the same 3 words he always closed with, "Almost home now." Sarah read it twice, then handed it to David, who had never heard his father's voice, but for the first time in 34 years, he read something his father wrote directly to him, even if it wasn't addressed to him at all. They framed the letter beside the folded flag. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, they read it aloud, together, out loud, so the words don't just sit quietly in a frame collecting dust, so somebody keeps saying them. Sarah says she used to think closure meant an ending. Now she thinks it just means finally being allowed to finish a conversation that got interrupted 34 years too soon. Michael Hayes never made it home, but in the end, in the truest way a piece of paper can carry a person, his last words finally did. If this story moved you, know that it's a tribute built from the echoes of thousands of real families who lived some version of this waiting. Share it with someone who understands what it means to hold on to hope long after everyone tells you to let go. And if you've ever waited for someone who didn't come home, we see you.